Call to order the Board of Education meeting for Monday, November 27, 2023. Please call the roll.
Mr. Dahl.
Here.
Mrs. Dernbaugh.
Here.
Mr. Schroyer.
Here.
Megan Sparks.
Here.
Dr. Rohr.
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we have a motion for approval of the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh.
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer.
Yes.
Megan Sparks.
Yes.
Dr. Rohr.
Yes. Next, buildings report, school psychologist.
So thank you. I'll start off a little bit and introduce our school psychologists. So for about the past year or so, we've taken the time to recognize a lot of the folks in our operation throughout the district, whether it be our building principals at each of the levels, transportation supervisors, food service, and tonight I'm excited to have our school psychologist do a brief presentation to kind of talk a little bit about what they do. Earlier this month, we celebrated School Psychology Week, but it's kind of like birthdays in my family. We celebrate the whole month. So tonight we get to celebrate the whole month of our school psychs. I appreciate what they do each and every day, and I think it'd just be a good opportunity tonight for them to kind of introduce themselves and tell the community a little bit about what they do day in and day out.
Thanks for having us. So we're the school psychologists, some of the school psychologists in Centerville. There are two of us who are ill, and they're not able to be here tonight. But what we're going to do you want the mic? I can speak louder, too. Okay. So we are the some of the school psychologists here in Centerville. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we do, because I think nobody really knows what we do, right? We're just these mysterious people with briefcases that look like suitcases walking through the building. And the kids all think we live there. And while it may feel like that, we really don't. So the first thing we're going to do is show you guys a little video that just is a brief synopsis of a pretty comprehensive look at some of the different things and roles that we play.
Students and their families have many diverse experiences during their time at school, and school psychologists are there to support them on their journey. School psychologists are among the most highly trained mental health professionals in schools, with expertise in child development, teaching and learning, behavior, mental health, and educational systems to be able to provide key academic support and mental health support to youth. They hold either a master's degree or doctoral degree in school psychology. They help design, implement, and evaluate interventions aiming to prevent and treat problems. They are trained to provide assessment, counseling, and other types of intervention to students with mental health, behavioral, and learning difficulties. They are dedicated to creating safe and positive school climates where all learners are recognized and supported in ways that make sense to them. They know a lot about equity and diversity applied to learning, which helps them support education. School psychologists assist teachers in choosing their instructional strategies to be tailored to students' individual needs. Their work also involves facilitating strong family-school community partnerships through collaboration and teamwork, and improving accountability through research, data collection, progress monitoring, and program evaluation. Most school psychologists work in public school settings, but some work in private schools, community agencies, hospitals, clinics, or universities. Students could see a school psychologist if they wish to improve their learning or attention, behavioral difficulties, anxiety, depression, relationships with family and peers, or coping with stressors. To find out more, visit us online.
And I would note that's actually very relevant for the United States as well. It's from one of our international school psychology groups. So I'm Brianna Sark-Herman. I'm one of the school psychologists. This is my 16th year in the district. I currently am assigned to preschool, Primary Village North, K1, and Stingley Elementary, and then I'm currently also doing work at the middle school level.
Good evening. My name is Angela McDermott, and I am presently serving the students and families of Klein and Driscoll Elementaries, as well as our School of Possibilities and Incarnation Catholic School. And this is my 21st year as a school psychologist in Centerville.
And I'm Chad Folk. I am a school psychologist over at the high school and at Magzig down there. And I've been here for 18 years. So thank you guys.
Hi, everybody. Last but not least, I guess, I'm Yolanda Crooms. I serve Primary Village South and Centerville High School. And this is just my second year in the district. I worked in Dayton Public for 20 years and Indianapolis Public for 2 years before that. So I've been around a while, lived in Centerville for a while, have 3 kids here, and am now working here.
So one of the things that we do that's really a critical part of our role, particularly at the primary and elementary level, is our involvement in our collaboration with our curriculum department in multi-tiered systems of support. So multi-tiered systems of support just means that we start at the bottom with the curriculum and the instruction that all kids get, right? But some kids need more than that. So we layer additional supports on top of that. And then that's like a tier 2 level of support. And then some kids still need more than that or something different than that. So we layer that intervention or support and instruction on top of that. We support teachers and families and students across all levels of support, starting at tier 1 all the way to tier 3, which is our most intensive level of support. So we are involved in collaboration with our school principals, with the counselors. We serve on the building level teams as well as district level teams in the development of this intervention process. And as we continue to move this process forward from the elementary to push some of those interventions and strategies up to the upper grades. One of the big things that I think all of us wholeheartedly believe, and that's really part of our district philosophy, is the idea that kids do well if they can. What that means is that we believe that if students have the ability to do well, they will. That doing well is preferable to not doing well. And if they're not doing well with something or not able to meet some expectation that we've set forth for them, there's a reason, and it's part of our job to help our teams problem solve and figure out what we can do as a school district to support them. It's really important to have a philosophy, and I think this aligns very well with the district initiatives for empowering, challenging, and supporting. One of the other things that we as school psychologists do is we talk about brains. I recently met a student in one of the buildings who was like, what are you? Who are you and what do you do? And I told him, he goes, oh, you know about my brain. Well, sort of, maybe. But what we do is we talk about the brain and we talk about how you're feeling and how kids can start to identify what they're feeling with what's going on in their brain. The reason that's important is because if you understand when I start to feel hot in my stomach, that means I might be angry. That may mean that my amygdala, my emotional center is taking over. If you recognize that when it's happening, you can develop strategies to cope with it so that you end up being able to meet the expectations we have for you instead of having some type of maladaptive behavior. So we teach kids about that. We talk about it. We talk about what's going on when they feel something. How does that feel in their body? And help them connect that to their behavior so that they understand the connection between what's happening up here and the behaviors that we see in the classroom. We also talk about regulation. So once you have those strategies and you're able to employ them, those are those coping skills that all kids need to have to be able to cope with stress. And that's a really critical part of what we do. And this is just a graphic that kind of highlights some of the regulation strategies we talk about. All of these things are applicable for students preschool through 12th grade. We just have them presented at different levels that are age appropriate. Part of the reason that we focus so heavily upon those concepts, particularly again at primary and elementary levels, is because it aligns with our purposeful people and our character strong initiatives. This particular curriculum aligns with the idea that if we meet those basic physiological needs that kids have, that sense of shelter, having food, having safety, having a sense of belonging, feeling like they have somewhere that they belong. If we start there and they have those senses met and those needs met, then they're going to be able to learn. And only then are they going to be able to learn. Because if we don't hit those things right, we're not going to be able to get to those higher levels of esteem, self-actualization, and learning, because that's where it all occurs. So kind of the things that we do kind of vary level to level. Our involvement changes. How we engage with preschoolers is very different than how we engage with high schoolers. But those are kind of this overarching tenets of what we do and why we do it. So if you guys want to talk a little bit about how it might change for your levels and the buildings you serve?
So I mentioned that I currently serve 2 of our elementary buildings as well as one of our parochial schools and the School of Possibilities. So all of our roles are quite varied in that we're serving multiple levels and different varieties of students. We have different classrooms in our various buildings that are designed to meet the needs of specific types of learners. And over at Driscoll specifically, we have classrooms designed for our students with lower incidence disabilities and many students who are medically fragile in nature and things like that. So it's very important that, as Brianna mentioned, that we are meeting the physiological needs, the safety needs, the wellness needs, so that we can get to the point of being able to meet their other needs in those classrooms. So that's something that's somewhat special about Driscoll in particular. Klein Elementary also has different classrooms designed to meet different types of learners' needs. And I've seen that kind of evolve over the years too, in terms of the types of learners that we are working really hard to meet the needs of in that space. SOP, of course, meets the needs of many of our at-risk students at the upper levels. And so there's many efforts in place there to work with those students and to ensure that all of those needs in that pyramid are also being met. And then at Incarnation, we're responsible for Child Find, and I also support the needs of students who have 504 plans, as well as a variety of social emotional needs that may not necessarily tip into a suspicion of a disability. So thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for having us.
It's dangerous when I get a microphone. I appreciate you guys. I mean, I'm different the way I talk, I want to say this, I am so thankful to be here in this district. I just want you to know that. And the day in the life of a psychologist is fascinating if you're data geeky like me, maybe. But I'll tell you honestly, one of the things I've thought about, I really, really appreciate. Well, I got to say this: we are a team. We work on teams. So a psychologist is not an isolated person sitting in a building somewhere. But yet, you got kids who come up to me and say, I'm the superintendent, things, weird stuff like that on a regular basis because they don't know what you do. They don't see you regularly. So I'm going to say this, that if you like problem solving, this job is amazing. So one of the things at the high school or at MagZig, something that's just a little bit different is that I feel like we have an opportunity to be a liaison a little bit more with the parents. Now, I just say that. I know everybody has contacts with parents, but you do not take that for granted. When you're a psychologist, you have regular contact with parents, and you're contacting them from a different perspective. And you're not taking a side, you're trying to listen and understand and empathize and try to solve a problem. So I also want to say that in our roles and some of the things that she said there was like the tiered system in the high school and in the middle school level, I find myself functioning more at that top tier already. So the problem-solving approaches that have already happened and moved, the teams that they've moved through trying to solve problems, they still exist. But it's not a boring idea if you think about this. What I love about the neuropsychological perspective is that now when they're at the higher level, we're trying to understand really what is that disability, narrow in on it, and there are new disabilities popping up all of the time. Nonverbal learning disability. Do you know what that is? Autism has changed so often through the years. ADHD for sure. We get that. There's the explosive disorders. There's emotional disorders. They are so numerous, and we have to wrap our arms around it and understand what the data looks like from a interview perspective, from an observational perspective, from actual doing the tests, and how many people. I get into this. It's just very odd, but it is true. There are neuropsych assessments to give. Nobody else does that, so why not be the one doing it? It's really a cool thing. I'm not kidding you. But when you take that expertise and you align it with the teachers that are on the ground on a regular basis, there's something kind of cool about it. You can take your perspective, and you're not there to say, okay, I know everything, and guess what? I'm the school psychologist, move over, it's all going to be taken care of. Honestly, we know that's not true. There are so many problems going on in society and in our classrooms, and our kids need a team approach with people that understand this neuropsych approach. and can also take it into the classroom and say, okay, you know, I hear what you're doing, I see what you're doing, and put some words and understand what the people that do not understand what these disabilities and how they manifest themselves and how they can be treated. It's just a little bit of a nuance that I think is really cool and is really needed. I never want to change that. And if you always open your door, you're going to find that people are constantly knocking at it and asking you questions, and then you grow as well. So I really, really like it. I might have been here for 18 years, but I am so learning. I mean, I'm learning about new disabilities every day. So thank you, guys.
My turn. And I will say it is a unique experience to be in a district and be able to see it from beginning to end at the same time. Having PVS in the high school. Today I started at PVS and ended at the high school, and a tired first grader and a tired 10th grader are very similar. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. But one of the things that I really like about working at the high school is I get to take a student, like we've said, who's been through all of these stages, and say to them, do you understand why you have an IEP? Let's really talk about what it is, because I want you to be able to tell people and articulate what your needs are. We go through all the accommodations and we talk about what is it that you really want in your next step. When you talk about going on to continue your education, or you're going to go into entrepreneur, you want to own your own business, what things do you need to have so that you can get started and get where you need to go? If anybody looks at my computer searches, sorry, because they see me searching colleges, they see me searching careers, you know, kids say all the things. And I'm like, well, let's look it up and see what you need to do to get there. And so I spend a lot of time doing that. And I think that parents are usually pretty happy that somebody has talked. And sometimes we have the reality talks. I had a kid tell me he wants to be a biochemical engineer. And I said, your grades need to change if that's what you want to do. And so we talked about what that will look like. We've got 2 years. You can do what you want to do, but you need to make that your goal. And really talking about goal setting and making sure the IEP matches what it is that they want to do. So that's just one thing I wanted to add that I do love.
So I think the thing that you should be getting from all of us, hopefully, is the idea that relationships matter, right? That is at the core of what we do and how we do it. We have to work collaboratively. We have to be part of the team. We have to trust each other, and we have to build relationships with families, with our colleagues, with kids, with teachers, with everybody, right? That's how we improve things within our community. And so the whole idea is that people, not a program, but people are what changes people. The way we make progress is together as a team with each other. And that's, I think, something that is very much at the heart of what we do and very much aligns with the district initiatives as well. So thank you guys for your time tonight. If you guys have any questions, we're happy to answer.
Yeah, just hang for a sec. So again, I think it's important for the public to realize, you know, when we talk about the needs of psychologists and working with students, this is part of it. There aren't enough. There aren't enough in the school or any school right now. The level of disabilities that has grown dramatically, the amount of anxiety, depression, social issues have all grown dramatically, which you can attest to. The number of students we have on IEPs, and again, for those people that don't know, I mean, we tend to throw out a lot of initials. It's Individualized Educational Plan. How many students would you say roughly are on IEPs right now? 1,000 students. How many psychologists in the school district?
6.
6 for 1,000 students that are on IEPs that work with them. So, you know, when we talk about our needs, they're real. We're not making stuff up, and we'll continue. And I know from everyone on this board, thank you. Your work is not easy. It's hard. I've been there. I feel for you, and hopefully we'll continue to give you as much support as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
It's true. You have the ability to get with these kids, being able to doesn't understand the importance of what you do on a day-to-day basis for our kids. In fact, repeated reports from our student reps, how the high school kids always have been talking about we need more mental health. We need people to come in, all the issues that you guys have described, and others that aren't IEP related, just to come out and deal with my kids' fresh issues, things like that. I echo what Dave said. The idea that we might have your group with us, and other counselors with us, be a testament to all those kids and all our caregivers in our community. And I hope we never have to go there.
And the other thing which was mentioned is that they also serve Incarnation. It's not just our schools, it's students in Incarnation, private schools that we work with. So your tax dollars are not only going just here, we're servicing families that go to Incarnation that live in our communities. So it's not just here. So
Correct.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come back. All right, next is public participation. I'll read the statement. We recognize the value to school governance of public comment on educational issues, the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. The portion of the meeting for participation shall be limited to 30 minutes. Each person must register in advance of speaking, may not register other speakers, must first be recognized before their comments are made, and each statement made to the participant shall be limited to 3 minutes or less. Typically, as a board, we listen to all speak, generally do not engage in discussion at this time, and matters that require follow-up will be directed typically to the superintendent or another board member. And we have one speaker, brand new speaker, Paul. You're welcome.
Paul Sefjack, Washington. Paul Sefjack, Washington Township. The number of college students selecting teaching as a profession has declined. Both Mr. Wesney and Mr. Tarpey have reported this fact and noted the increasing difficulty in hiring well-qualified teachers for district openings. Fortunately, there are two tools that this board and only this board can give them. The first is to delete Article 30.01, Paragraph B of the union contract, which states, a teaching staff member commencing employment with or being reemployed by the Centerville School District should not be placed above Step 7 on the salary schedule. If you cannot delete it, then change it to longevity Step 19. How does excluding experienced teachers from the pool of candidates benefit the Centerville School District? The second item is page 108 of the contract, of the teacher's contract, designated teacher salary schedule fiscal year 2024. Base years 0 through 5 need to be increased by 6%. These are the years when young adults have the most demand for income as they pay student loans, find housing, transportation, and start families. Give them a financial reason to join the Centerville team. Steps 7 through 13 require no modifications, and I believe that the monies to support these increases should be shifted from top salaries to new hires. Then, in regard to your discussion about placing a levy on the March 2024 ballot, this discussion is an insult to all taxpayers. You were told by the taxpayer, you were told no by the taxpayers. Do you not understand the word no? Do you view us as too stupid to understand the consequences of our vote? A vote to place the levy on the ballot prior to November 2024 is the equivalent of giving the finger to all voters. I urge you, do not do it.
Thank you. All right, next, board and administrative reports. There is no legislative report tonight, correct? Student reps had a report tonight? Yay.
Hi, I'm Thomas Garcia. I'm a senior board rep.
Hi, I'm Ashita Mantry. I'm also a senior board rep.
And I'm Samari Williams. I'm a junior board rep, and I'll be giving our main presentation about our Miami Valley board meeting that we had back on November, I believe, 12th or 11th, and some of our main topics that we discussed. Right now, a big one, like we had mentioned before, was somehow including club sports within like in the realms of as it counting for a gym credit, because we have a lot of students in a lot of districts that participate in club sports, not through their schools. However, they're still required to get their gym credit, however long may it be. So for examples, in Centerville, a lot of kids play hockey or they do rowing, and we don't have those teams through the school, so they cannot have that as their gym credit, and they have to take a gym class. And a lot of these kids put in around 60 hours of practice a week, maybe like 2 or 3 hours a day, not including weekends, and they compete just as much or more as kids who participate in school sports. So we feel as they should also have that opportunity to have that time they allot to their school sport, to their club sport, as the same as a kid who would be doing a sport through their school. Some of the things we would have to discuss is like, what are the current rules with the OHSAA organization, and how would we keep track of these hours of their practice hours, and how would that then align with the curriculum through the ODE? The second and I guess our biggest point is House Bill 8, more commonly known as the Parent Bill of Rights. It is passed through the Ohio House of Representatives, and it ironically has to do with a lot of school intervention with our school psychologist, and how public the information is that your child is sharing with them, and how it is related to parents, and to do with, I guess, like curriculum. What is your child learning? And essentially this bill would make it more, I guess, like publicly known to the parents, and I guess more parent choice in that. However, it lacks the integrity of student privacy, or whether or not like accounts for dangerous situations in parental households as they exist. And a more minor point we talked about was Senate Bill 162, which had to do with school intervention with kids who are behind the learning curve due to COVID-19. And we mentioned that that there would be like no funding provided for the schools if this were to pass. So that's about it.
Is that it? Thank you.
Thomas, can you talk real fast what the group's goals are? What is our big goals for the group? Because we're working with West Carrollton, Northmont, Valley View. Where do you guys hope to go speak?
We hope to speak with our legislatures, both like locally and at the state level, to see what we can do to get things changed in the future.
Okay.
And testify in front of potentially the House or Senate about these topics.
Okay. Listen, just so you know, in terms of this club sports, we'll check into that, see if it's doable and what the Ohio Athletic Association requirements are. Okay. I know it's been a question for years, to be honest with you, because I know it started with dance when my kid was taking dance and whether to use it, and then we got a dance program here. But we'll check into it. I mean, it's
that they divide. So someone on our team's working on it with Valley View.
Yeah, all three of us are working with a student from Valley View about the club sport issue. Right now, I think our current action is to talk to our athletic directors, and then hopefully talk to whoever runs our conference, so the GWAC conference for us, and how like would we be able to then like integrate this into our curriculum, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
As it stands, though, it's a state mandated issue from ODE. It's not a local issue. It's not from OHSA. Is that correct?
No, it's from OHSA.
Which what?
It can be done through
Credit flags.
Yeah.
There's some logistical
Right.
challenges in where we would draw the line.
In terms of which clubs and how much time, and right, it's just a matter of
Track that.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
They're going to have to be widespread, or it can't just be our school district. It's going to have to be a bigger group. It's going to have to follow the same things.
But again, just like Miami Valley, we tend to be the region's leaders, and if we can get this started, dominoes tend to fall. So we'll look into it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good job, guys. Proud of you.
Quality profile update. Ooh. Sarah.
Shorter than Thomas. Good evening. I'm Sarah Swan, the district's community relations specialist. Each year we publish a quality profile that highlights some of the important elements making up the comprehensive high-quality educational experience for students here in Centerville schools. During the 2022-23 school year, we began implementing our new strategic plan and continued our collaboration with students, parents, staff members, and community members to develop the Portrait of an Elk and begin discussions of other long-term plans such as our master facility needs. Tonight I'm going to share just a few of last year's accomplishments with the community. The full profile is available under the About Us tab on our district website. With the leadership of our teachers and administrators, we received an overall rating of 5 stars on the 2022-23 state report card, the highest mark a school district can receive, and we exceeded expectations for all 5 report card components. Over half of Ohio's state tests taken by our students resulted in accomplished, advanced, or advanced plus scores, and all of our state identified subgroups exceeded performance goals for Ohio's state tests in English, language arts, and math. Centerville High School continued to offer a rigorous curriculum to prepare students for college and careers. U.S. News & World Report ranked CHS in the top 7% of public high schools in Ohio and the top 10% in the nation. 1,680 AP exams were administered in 28 subject areas. That was 148 more exams than the previous year. A lot of that work is due to the high school's efforts to broaden our number of AP courses and get more students involved in those classes. CHS students received a score of 3 or above on 72% of those exams. 74% of our teachers hold at least a master's degree and nearly 70% have more than 10 years of experience. In athletics and performing arts, there are several pages in the quality profile. I'll just give 4 examples. We had more than 2,100 participants on 105 different high school and middle school athletic teams. The girls golf team, girls tennis doubles team, one of our para swimmers, and a discus athlete were all state champions, and we had members of 11 other teams make it to their respective state tournaments. Centerville schools were honored for the 4th time with the Best Communities for Music Education designation from the NAM Foundation for outstanding commitment to music education. And we had students that had opportunities to perform in local, state, and national competitions and with award-winning professionals from their respective arts programs. We had 8,239 students enrolled in preschool through high school. That was a 1.3% increase from the previous school year. 27% of those students were part of a minority group. 27% were identified as gifted. 13% had special needs. We had 315 English learners last year who spoke more than 40 languages, and 23% of students received free or reduced price meals. The Elks Express mobile learning station, in its first full year out on the road, participated in more than 25 events to connect with families in their neighborhoods. And another way we connected with our community was by starting our safety series with our partner, the nonprofit Centerville Safe. And we had 5 of those last year that focused on responding to active threats, social media safety, and mental health. All of our K-5 buildings were named Schools of Excellence in Prevention for planning and implementing prevention programs and strategies to support student mental wellness. We applied for and received more than $850,000 in grants to help with safety and security projects throughout the district. That included things like our visitor management system and the ongoing project for access controls on our exterior doors. And our Treasurer's Office once again received the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the GFOA of the United States and Canada, and that's the highest form of recognition in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting. So again, these are just a few of the many accomplishments outlined in the quality profile, and we invite everyone in the community to check out the entire booklet on our website. You just go to the About Us tab and select quality profile, and you can read through the booklet. That is all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Treasurer's report. Sauber.
So actually, number 4 and number 5, we're going to kind of take together as the treasurer's report and the 5-year forecast and levy next steps. Just review some of the options that we talked last week at the work session and possible resolutions for approval later this evening. So kind of looking at the next steps as we talked about last week, we changed the presentation a little bit, so we want to kind of go back and just highlight a few things. Really looking at our district finances. Why do school districts rely on voted levies? Our next steps, what we can do as we move forward, what are the immediate reductions that we have in place, and then future opportunities to be back on the, potentially be back on the ballot in 2024 and again in 2025. So moving forward with district finances.
Yep. Just to bring up a couple of points that we've been talking about for months, Centerville is a district that receives the majority of its operating revenue from our local property taxes. So we're a high wealth, high income district that receives support from the state, but that share of state support is much lower than what it is in other areas of the state and in other school districts. Those operating revenues we use to fund all the day-to-day, or the majority of the day-to-day costs of educating our students, and that's getting them here in the mornings on the buses, teaching them all day long, providing all of the supports that the psychologists talked to us about, and getting them home at night, and then making sure that we're, lighting our buildings and heating them and cooling them, and, all the utilities and things that way. So again, those day-to-day operations is what we're talking about. House Bill 920, there's been a lot of conversation around that with the property reappraisal. And so you can go back and watch any of the presentations that we've been giving since August to learn more about House Bill 920. But in essence, on our voted levies, the existing voted levies, we don't receive additional funding as our property values go up. And that, in essence, is the effect that happens from House Bill 920. So our revenue stays very flat, even when there's growth throughout the district. We do receive a very small amount of additional property taxes when value goes up, and that's from inside millage. That's not a voted levy. And that has been factored into our forecasted numbers that we've been planning for at least the last year. So on the agenda tonight for your approval, it is the 5-year forecast. So just from a compliance standpoint, just a reminder to all of you, the 5-year forecast is required to be filed with the Ohio Department of Education by November 30th of each year, and it's required for the board to approve that. I presented these exact numbers to you back in September. So this has been the budget we've been working with for several months now. So there have been no major changes for me to change these numbers before we submit to ODE yet this month. So you can see we have revenue expenses, but I want to just highlight the line that is labeled surplus and deficit. Again, that typical levy cycle, after you pass a new money ask, which the last ask for us was back in 2019, you tend to increase or have a surplus in your revenue where your revenue is exceeding your expenses. And so you can see in 21 and 22, we were adding to our cash balance and operating at a surplus. But starting last year, we started to deficit spend, and you can see that deficit increases year over year, including this year. We're anticipating to operate at about a $4.1 million deficit. And so, again, this is a summary version of the actual forecast that you would have received in your packet. I had also given you a copy of that last week to consider as well. But that is the 5-year forecast that's on the agenda a little bit later for your approval.
So again, last week we looked at some immediate next steps. We talked about a hold on new hires, on current open positions, reduced positions based upon attrition, when somebody retires and not bringing that position back, hire staff at the lowest level, step 0 on the pay scale, and a plan for staff and program reductions. The immediate next step reductions I'm talking about tonight are just what we're putting in place right now. It's a very small, tiny step to kind of look at our spending and make some reductions now the best we can. In addition to that is looking at no subs for some of our classified positions, like for some of our secretaries, office aides, and custodians. We've been paying overtime. We've asked to limit or stop overtime. Right now, we've had some custodial shortages, which we've asked our maintenance staff to come out and to cover some of those areas. So we said no to future overtime, which could impact us for special events or weather situations that we may have during the cold and snowy weather season coming up. We've asked our building principals to limit extra trips or field trips in their buildings, all in a way to kind of reduce or try to make some savings right now immediately as a result of the election. Last week, somebody mentioned the fact of how much savings in overtime. In last fiscal year in 2023, we spent about $530,000 on overtime. Through 5 months, we're just under $200,000. That's about a $335,000 savings if we can limit overtime from now until the end of the fiscal year. So again, just a small step for us to save on some of the overtime and to start saving money now immediately. Future election opportunities. Again, we shared this last week, but I think it's just important to point out the future election dates. March this year, because it's a primary election, it's March 19th, 2024. Again, there's a second election in November, the presidential election on November 5th of 2024. And due to going back to a normal election cycle, the next opportunity would be May 6th of 2025. I think the important part of this slide is to understand that collections, there is no new money. If no new money is passed in 2024, or if money is passed in 2024, collections won't begin until January 2025. So whether it's March or November, we won't receive any additional money until the following January of 2025. The same would apply for May 6th. If we go back and wait, which would put us at 6 years of being out since we've asked for new money, if we decide to go May 6th, 2025, again, we wouldn't start getting collection until January 2026. So I think it's important to understand that when the collection begins and what would happen if we wait for that future date if we don't get any additional money for the district. Some considerations that we've talked about. We know it's a quick turnaround between now and March. Some things I think we have to share with the public, if as far as implications. If it passes, it minimizes some of our reductions that we would have to have in place for the 24-25 school year. If it fails, we would have to implement some reductions immediately. If we wait till November, some of the same things apply. It's a presidential election. Reductions would have to be implemented, maybe even in addition if it fails in November of 2024. We talked about some of those mid-year reduction strategies, could be with busting or walking zones and those types of things as we move forward as a way to save additional money. Very similar to those intermediate steps that I just talked about we're doing right now. Reductions, if we wait till May 6th, 2025, again, it could be even more reductions, and we'll see more of that as we move forward in the next slide. Before we get to some of those comparisons and the resolutions that we have on the agenda tonight, I think it's important for people to understand the combined operating and PI levy that we just had on the ballot in 2023 and how that's impacted with the tax reappraisal. So most of you are familiar that we were asking for 5.9 mils in a new levy based upon the 2022 property values that was going to generate about $12 billion in revenue for the district. To match that next year due to the reappraisal, it'd be about 4.5 mils due to that reappraisal based upon the 23 property values, and again would generate about $12.9 million in revenue. Some of the options, and we did add an option based upon some of our conversations from last week, looking at going back as early as March of 2024 with a 3.9 mil operating levy. It's a lot less than what we asked for this past November. We would have to look at also making some efficiencies through attrition. Again, looking at specific positions through retirements and where we can make some reductions with option A. Option B is a less mil operating, 3.5 mil operating levy. Again, there'd be some budget reductions. We've anticipated anywhere between $500,000 to $1 million in reductions with that to keep up with the strategic plan. We'd also have to look at some efficiency through attrition with that process as well. Option C, which is new, we didn't talk about, but we added it to the agenda tonight, was a combined, very similar to what we did this past November, combined 3.5 mil operating with a 0.4 mil PI to help with the PI fund. Again, very similar to option B, we'd still have to make some reductions through attrition and try to look at cutting between $500,000 and $1 million through option C. And then finally, we talked about not being on the ballot at all in 2024. Based on the budget and the program reductions, about $2 million to $2.5 million going into the 24-25 school year. So I just emphasize with that, no new money coming in 2024. We'd have to consider some additional reductions because if we didn't pass in May of 2026, we're still not bringing in new money. May of 2025, we wouldn't bring in any new money until January of 2026. So those are the four options that we discussed and looked at last week and that are on the agenda for you to consider tonight.
Some of the numbers behind those options. Option A is a 3.9 mil levy that would pass in 2024. You can see the bottom yellow line that it basically brings us out, or it almost balances the budget for fiscal year 25, and then allows us to add to our balance for 2026 and keeps our cash balance at a pretty stable amount for the duration of the 5-year forecast. Option B and C are a similar look at the numbers because these numbers are just for operations. The PI component of option C is accounted for separately in a separate fund, the Permanent Improvement Fund. And so when we're talking about the reductions, we said $500,000 to $1 million. I met in the middle. You can see a $750,000 reduction there for fiscal year 25. Again, very similar numbers to what option A brings forward. Our cash balance stays pretty healthy. We're out to about 4 years before we start significant deficit spending then again at that point. Option D is with no levy factored in for 2024. We didn't model anything for 25 because that's a little far out to be doing that at this point. You know, we said $2 to $2.5 million in reductions, but I want to make sure to point out to the board that that does not eliminate the deficit spending in 2025. And so, you know, if the consideration would be to wait until that May of 2025, we would want to look at increasing that number in terms of the reductions going into the 24-25 school year. But, you know, we as an administrative team felt that we would be committed to a reduction piece to up to about $2.5 million going into the 24-25 school year.
Just to add to that, Laura, we did also talk about if we chose not to go back in November of 2024, we'd also have to look at making even more reductions, maybe up to $5 million in deficit spending for the fiscal year 2025 fiscal year. So we talked about a potential timeline with the board. We discussed options, the options we just went through this evening. Last week, the approval of the resolutions tonight does not mean that we have made a full commitment of being on the March ballot. It just gives us an opportunity to move forward, opportunity to continue to have conversations with our staff. And we've set up some community listening sessions in the month of December. With a work session on, December the 11th, and then we have some open discussion nights on listening nights on December the 12th and the 14th that we will provide an opportunity for the community to give us feedback on our finances and where we are financially and how we should look at moving forward. Depending on the feedback we get, we would have a resolution on the regular board meeting agenda on December the 18th for approval, or decide not to go back in March. And so just want to kind of lay that timeline out so everyone is very familiar with that timeline. Talked a little bit about the community listening sessions. Brief presentation from our district leadership. They would not be considered a school board meeting. Obviously, a brief presentation, very similar to what you've heard tonight, but at least listening opportunity to collect feedback about our district finances. Same as hearing of the public, kind of what you heard tonight. Procedures would be followed. People would, community would have 3 minutes per person to share their thoughts and concerns about being back on the March ballot in March. Session dates, I mentioned December 11th, which is our work session right here in the South Unit Commons. We are looking also at December 12th as a session at 6:30 at Klein Elementary on Virginia Avenue. And again, on December 14th, a listening session at Primary Village South on Paragon Road. So those are the dates that we're looking at, opening up to the community to be able to provide some of that feedback to us to make a decision. Excuse me. So any questions?
Comments, anyone?
I did want to just mention, and Mr. Wesney did say this, but the resolutions on the agenda for tonight is doing nothing more than authorizing me to file the resolution with the county auditor for the auditor to certify the amount of funds that would be made available with each levy option. So it's not 3 levies, it's not that at all. It's giving different options for us to then have that information based on the feedback from the community to make a recommendation in December. Just wanted to make sure that that was stressed again.
Laura, I know it's not part of this process at this point in time, but if you look at the percentage of the budget or the percent of uncommitted funds or reserves, however you want to call it, I know that all of the financial officers, treasurers throughout the state of Ohio have their own organization, and they recommend at the very least that you have around a 20% reserve at any point in time. I see as we go on, we're getting lower and lower now. How does the reduction of our reserve amount affect our ability to need to go out for loans, perhaps? Or we want to try to put a bond mission on them later if we need to have more buildings. One of the things we were hoping to do if we pass the levy was maybe get to the point where we could have all-day kindergarten. And that's going to cost money for teachers and also perhaps building more space, because I know we're pretty tight now. So how does that affect that situation that we'd be in?
The lower the cash balance, the more negative outlook you have in terms of your operations. There's a lot that the rating agencies factor into that, but cash balance is one. Levy success and failure rates is another piece to that. They take a look at is the community supportive of the district, and so that's a piece as well. So it could have an impact, down the road, yes.
You mentioned also that we're considered a high wealth, high income, I think is the word you used. Who makes that determination?
So that is a part of the Fair School Funding Plan, and every state funding plan that's been in place for 20 plus years. There's always a factor in the school funding model that takes a look at property value and then income as well. More so recently, the income piece has become more of a factor. There's a lot that goes into that calculation, but it's a piece of the state funding model.
And as I recall, there's reports, data collected in reports about the income level of all the communities where our school districts are. And people would think ours would be much higher than some of our neighbors. Quite frankly, it's not. I think the last time I looked, it was around $56,000 was for ours, which is lower than some of the other school districts, but still, we're getting only 13% from the state.
Yes, and yes, that's correct. And we continue to be on the guarantee. We've received a little bit of additional funding in some of our categories of funding, like for things like transportation. But the actual base funding itself, we're on a guarantee and will continue to be at least for the next 2 years.
one of the,
Oh, go ahead, John. I'm gonna let you go first this time.
all right. Another thing that concerns board members at least, and for the administration as well, is that how often you want to be on the ballot. And I think we went from 2013, 2019, over a 6-year period of time, so we passed a fairly decent, I think it was 5.9 at that point. It was something close to that. With a lower percentage, a lower millage rate going into our general fund, that bring us to a point we'll have to go back on the ballot earlier.
Well, the lower that cash reserve gets, then yes, potentially. If the cash reserve drops too low and we can't build it back up, depending on how much we ask for, then yes. I think that's an accurate statement.
I mean, if you look at your options here, going down to under 20% pretty quick.
It does, yes.
Thank you.
I appreciate adding the PI portion into option C. I think that taking that out altogether was very concerning after our discussion last week. And I appreciate the illustration of option D as far as weighting goes. I still struggle with going back to the community after such a resounding vote in November. I think I'm fine with getting the actual numbers and knowing the dollars and cents and leaving that door open depending on what we hear at our listening sessions. I think we need to make a concerted effort to show the community what we're doing, saying we hear you, and doing some things that we can control here, albeit uncomfortable and unpopular, before we go back. And I get the November ask date is less than ideal for many reasons, but I think the March one is too. So I'm fine with leaving the door open, like you said, and just getting the numbers and knowing what we're dealing with, waiting to hear what the public says at our meetings in November. I just really struggle with the idea of going back right away before we have a chance to really dig into what we can do on the school's end.
Megan, you want to say anything?
Still debating in my head. I'm looking forward to hearing what the public has to say. Not looking forward, but
Okay. Jeff, I know you won't be here. Do you want to say anything before you?
No, the only thing I think I wanted to mention was that in our cash balance on our 5-year forecast in 2025 drops below that 20% that you referred to, Laura, and at least you're right, I won't be here, but it's my opinion that as a board, one of our main jobs is to make sure that we have enough money for the school district to operate. So I think that's an important thing for all of us to remember, and I'm not dissing anyone that doesn't agree with that. I'm just sort of stating my thoughts. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. A couple of things. Number one, I know you mentioned about the voted millage from the past levies that we've had. I think it's important because I know a lot of the public, some say, so you've had 16 levies and you've had all these levies. You know, just to give you a concept, 20 years ago, if we voted millage in for $500,000, 20 years ago, on that levy, how much would we collect today? 500,000. So, you know, when our needs were 500,000 20 years ago, those needs aren't there today. So it's important to realize, even though we've had multiple levies, which we come back typically every 3, 4, 5 years, what we collected when we needed it doesn't change. So that's part of the reason we tend to come back so often. This is, again, I'll reiterate, this is a state legislature that has been told multiple times school funding is illegal and it's wrong and they need to do something. And our legislators have done typical thing, which they do is ignored it, just ignored it and not changed it. And who bears the brunt of that? Our public bears the brunt of that. In terms of this coming March, again, I am also wary of doing it so soon. I have no problem, as I told you earlier, about doing these resolutions so we can get the numbers, so we have time to make a decision. It does not commit us to any of these, and that's not a problem. In terms of the meetings, in terms of the public sessions, my only thought is, again, I think it's important. I think the public wants answers to questions, and despite having 3 minutes to come and talk, like some people do tonight, they won't get a lot of their answers. They'll come and say, I'm for it, I'm against it, don't do it, you know, as happened tonight. I would like to be able to have some, not dialogue, but allow people to have their 3 minutes and ask a question of which we can then answer that question. Because I just don't want to sit there and listen in the back for an hour and a half of, we don't want it, it's no good, and they're going to go, what are you going to do about it? And then we don't respond. So I'd like to have something where we could just say, listen, you can have your 3 minutes, you can ask one question, we will try our best to answer that question. And then have some that, now again, it won't be a back and forth, we're not going to go, well, you said this, I said this, but it gives us a chance to answer the questions that the public has. And that may give us a better idea of really what they're thinking. And number two is, it gives us an opportunity to answer those questions that they really have and explain to them why some of their beliefs may not be as accurate as they think. So I hope we can adjust that a little bit. I think just giving 3 minutes for people to say yes or no won't tell us. But you can have 20 people say yes and 20 people say no. We walk away from that meeting not knowing anything. So I think I'd like to just adjust that. And then obviously from that, we'll sit down here at the December board meeting and have an open discussion based on what we've heard and make a decision then. But there's going to have to be some, hopefully, good feedback for us to say, yes, we really need to do this in March. I'm also worried about November, but again, if we don't have time over these next 3 or 4 weeks, it's like true, it's just 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, to get feedback that makes us comfortable saying we should do this, then I think we really need to consider not doing it in March. I also want to see at those meetings our staff coming and saying, listen, we're behind this, we support this, we need this, and I think we missed that opportunity last time. There was a lot of apathy in this district from our staff. I don't, maybe you agree or don't agree, there were a lot of people that were behind it, but we didn't see that push like we have every time in the past. And I don't know how the public says yes when they see our staff not doing anything. I know some of it was the concern about what they can do, can't do, but they can come to these meetings and talk all they want. And if we go to these meetings and we're not seeing our staff getting involved, I think that says something also. Because who is it going to affect? It's going to affect them. It's going to affect the kids more, but it's going to affect them. So again, I'm okay doing all this stuff. I'd like to change the way we do these meetings, and then we'll make a decision in a few weeks. All right. Anything else? Last minute? All right. Thank you. All right, we'll go on to Treasurer's recommendations. Consider approving October 23rd financial statements, monthly general fund rolling report, monthly cash reconciliation, monthly fund activity report, then and now purchase orders approved by administration, certified by the treasurer and supported by the board resolution, totaling $33,005.52. Have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Consider approving the minutes of the following Board of Education meetings, October 3rd and November 20th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbach?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Next, consider approving the general fund 5-year forecast and assumptions for fiscal years 24 through 28 for submission to the Ohio Department of Education, which Mrs. Sauber presented a little bit earlier.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Next, superintendent recommendations. Superintendent recommends accepting resignation as listed on Schedule A. Superintendent recommends the employment, change of employment status, or change of contract status for the certificated personnel listed on Schedule B for the salaries, programs on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C for the salaries, programs, and effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the granting of leaves of absence for the personnel listed on Schedule E for the reasons and on the dates given. I have a motion for those.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. We need to do D and D1 separately? That's what I thought.
You
Yeah.
skipped.
D2. So D and D1 you can take together.
We could do that,
D2.
okay. Superintendent recommends the employment of personnel listed on Schedule D and D1 for supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Next, superintendent recommends the employment of the personnel listed on D2 for supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Abstain.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Again, next to the ones we talked about, the resolutions that we're just voting on, so that we can see what the auditor will come back with. It does not bind us to anything. Consider a resolution declaring it necessary to levy an additional 3.9 mil tax levy for the purposes of current expenses and requesting the Montgomery County Auditor to make certain certifications pursuant to sections 5705.03, 5705.217 of the revised code. Also consider declaring it necessary.
Those should be separate.
Separate?
Separate.
Yes, ma'am.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes, consider, did you want to say something? I thought you were going to say something.
No, sorry.
Consider resolution declaring it necessary to levy an additional 3.5 mil tax levy for the purposes of current expenses and requesting Montgomery County Auditor to make certain certifications pursuant to sections 5705.03, 5705.217 of the revised code.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Consider a resolution declaring it necessary to levy an additional 3.9 mil tax levy for the purpose of writing funds for current operating expenses and for general permanent improvements, and requesting Montgomery County Auditor to make certain certifications pursuant to section 5705.03, 5705.212 of the revised code.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Next, consider approving the reappointment of Randall Bowling to the Washington Centerville Public Library Board of Trustees to another 7-year term that would begin January 1st, 24 through December 31st, 2030.
So moved.
Second.
Again, we vote on these appointments. The library chooses the appointee. It is our job as the sort of the overseer of the libraries per the state request that we vote on this. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Consider a memorandum of understanding between the Centerville Classroom Teachers Association to approve the placement of a former classified employee on teacher salary schedule following professional certification.
So moved.
Second.
Well, again, this is something we had discussed at a meeting last time, just to put it on the schedule. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Consider authorizing Southwestern Ohio Educational Purchasing Council, acting jointly as a member of the Ohio School Consortium, to issue a request for a proposal for the purchase and competitive retail natural gas service from the lowest and best bidder submitted to the consortium, and authorizing the board to purchase competitive retail natural gas services from the bidder.
So moved.
Second.
Sure. So very similar to our bus bid purchases that we do every year. This just allows the EPC, Southwest Ohio Educational Purchasing Council, to do the bidding for us, to go out and get the best quotes, if you will, for natural gas and for our utilities. And we usually get a pretty good deal through the EPC because we were able to work with other districts and power our resources together to get a better price.
And again, one of the questions came up about, at our last meeting, about whether Centerville might be able to get good prices, and they're working on, of course, these prices are actually lower and better, so that's why we do it this way. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Any final comments regarding past or present old business from the Board of Education? Seeing none, we have a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Mrs. Sternbach?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. We will definitely put out these dates so you can spread the word and tell people, okay, for these upcoming meetings. Thank you all for coming.